Gavin Smith has vanished, and LA sheriffs are getting a partial picture of what happened.
This was not just a missing person.
Gavin's mistress, Chandrika Creech, gave up nothing to detectives at first, but spilled her guts to an informant, revealing that her jealous, bodybuilding, drug-dealing husband, John Creech, gave the popular studio exec a world-class beating. Left him battered inside his black Mercedes and threatened to do the same to her.
John Creech stops, gets out of the car, tells Chandrika, "You're next."
The young adulteress told the informant that she was terrified and hightailed it home. Creech, on foot, arrived a few minutes later. He spares Chandrika his physical rage, but makes a demand.
Tells her that if she doesn't drive him back to the location, he's going to tell the police that she was involved in Gavin Smith's murder.
But was Gavin Smith dead? Chandrika gives in to her husband and drives him back to the scene of the beating. Creech checks Gavin's pulse. There was none.
There's no doubt in her mind that Dick Gavin was dead.
John Creech eventually gets into the vehicle, drives the Mercedes-Benz back to his residence, and then begins making calls to people who he thinks will help him in terms of trying to hide the body and the car.
Both Chandrika and Creech had blood on their clothes. Chandrika claiming hers somehow transferred from her husband.
She threw it in the fireplace to burn them. Shortly after that, John Creech threw his clothes into the fireplace and burned them. So the evidence of what they were both wearing that evening was gone.
Creech is getting panicked and makes his first call for help to friend Jorge Valle.
He agrees to help John Creech to hide Gavin Smith's body, but he's not going to let him hide the car at his residence.
The men search for a suitable spot in the hills, but Creech isn't satisfied with the location. Enter Stan McQuay, a championship bodybuilder and friend of John Creech.
McQuay, ostensibly without asking any questions, lets him park the Mercedes-Benz inside the garage.
With the body?
With the body.
The team of willing cohorts grows even larger. Next on board to lend a hand is this woman, Rena Lim.
Rena took care of Chandrika's grandmother while she was terminally ill, living in the house, the Creech home.
Creech convinced Lim to rent a large storage locker and a van in her name. Then he heads back to Stan McQuay's garage, where the Mercedes and the body have been sitting for 5 days.
John Creech arrives in a rented U-Haul van, removes the body, and takes the body up to Palmdale, where he buries it.
All by himself?
All by himself.
Creech had other plans for Gavin's blood-stained Mercedes.
So the car then is not driven, it's towed to the storage facility.
Storage unit, yes.
How is it possible that they all stayed so quiet as far as making sure information was never leaked to the police?
I think it was self-preservation. They just felt that at that point, if they came forward, they were going to be charged with something, and so they wanted to keep their mouth shut.
As for Chandrika, cops say she witnessed the murder, but knew little else of the aftermath.
She only knows her husband was responsible for getting rid of Gavin Smith's car and the body, but she doesn't know exactly where they are.
She said John told her that he buried the body underneath power lines, believing that would affect our investigation. We would not be able to locate him.
It's a precarious situation for sheriff's homicide detectives who are building a case but not ready to make an arrest.
We were confident we knew what happened.
But you didn't have the car yet?
Did not have the car, and we did not have Gavin.
And detectives can't compromise the investigation by going public.
We were guarded on releasing information because if we give out too much information, we don't know if somebody's telling us what they heard on the news, or what they witnessed, or what they know for as a fact.
Even the anguished Smith family believed Gavin could still be a missing person.
He was missing. We didn't know anything other than that he was missing. We did so many searches.
They don't know that whether he's dead or alive. They can't get life insurance proceeds because there's been no legal determination that he's dead.
And every day we were in agony.
But almost a year after Gavin's disappearance, cops get an important lead.
When does the break in the case really come?
The break in the case comes when the police get a tip as to a storage facility that has a Mercedes-Benz.
And there it was in all its tainted glory, a blood-spattered Mercedes, minus a body, but with plenty of pay dirt in the way of evidence.
We found some DNA from John Creech on the key fob and also on the front license plate screw. The Smith family was able to declare Gavin Smith deceased.
I would imagine it's very painful for you and your family to know that John Creech was driving around with your poor brother wrapped in a blanket in the car.
I try not to think about it, but I do. How can you not?
Gavin's sister Tara was crushed.
I remember that day she cried on the couch for probably an hour and a half. You know, she was inconsolable.
Sheriffs begin interrogation roundups for everyone they believed knew about or assisted in Gavin's murder and cover-up. But the case was far from closed for detectives in Gavin's family.
We knew it was a homicide, and then we had to find the body just to get some kind of closure.
And incredibly, it would take another year and a half before Gavin's family would finally get that closure. Detectives would get the most critical pieces of evidence.
We have Gavin's remains.
The discovery was thanks to a hiker named Rocky Ramos and his dog Buddy.
We looked down and we seen what appeared to be a skull. It didn't have no lower jaw, no eye socket or nothing. It just had like the top.
And close by, the most devastating scene of all.
They find a shallow grave, which turns out to be the resting place of Gavin Smith, which his body is now skeletal because of the time period that's passed between his disappearance.
Cops make their move, but they don't have to go far to find John Creech. During the investigation of Gavin Smith, John Creech was imprisoned for drug dealing. Now, he's got a murder rap. Up next, Gavin Smith's family thinks prosecutors made a deal with a few devils.
I think a lot of people could have saved our families a lot of pain if they just came forward right out of the gate.
And a verdict that stunned the courtroom and even a judge.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, John Creech.
I think it was deliberate. I think it was calculated.
What prosecutors got instead would cause a collective jaw drop in the courtroom.